In the beginning, motorcycle racing was a competition between the men who built the first motor-driven bicycles. As they turned their inventions into a business and then into an industry, the manufacturers continued their race for technical superiority and market share. Competition was the proving ground for innovation. This is the story of the bikes and the companies that gave us the foundation for what we ride today. Starting out with this 1908 Hendy Manufacturing Indian motorcycle. Hendy Manufacturing started mass producing bikes in 1902, and the company went racing by 1907. Competition had become a popular form of entertainment throughout the U.S., with Indians dominating speed and reliability contests. While the earliest machines were powered by single-cylinder engines, Indian built one-of-a-kind V-twins for its race team as early as 1905. But to keep the brand competitive in local races, where the factory team wouldn't be on hand, Indian also cranked out a small batch of production racers starting in 1908. Bikes, like the one pictured here, weren't as exotic as the factory racers, but were considerably hotter than the street model, and it was even before the machine got its trick breeze carburetor and lightened pistons and its 61 cubic inch 1000cc motor. Indians were the bike of choice for many racers, but Paul J.C. Durkheim literally made his name on a 1908 Indian twin like this one. On February 22nd, 1908, Durkheim broke 10 speed records at a 1-mile dirt track in Los Angeles, clicking off the fastest time ever for a flying mile, 2 miles, 3 miles, and so on, up to 10 miles. His achievements were chronicled in newspapers, with one Los Angeles scribe dubbing him Daredevil Durkheim, a name that stuck throughout his racing career. Up next is this 1912 Indian V-twin modified factory racer. Based on the Indian twin-cylinder engine produced in 1907, the 8-valve, 4 for each of the 2 cylinders, was created strictly for competition purposes. The few that were made were reserved for the stars of the factory's Class A racing program and for qualified customers. These machines were mostly used in board track racing, which riders chased around steeply banked ovals built from wood planks at speeds of 90 miles an hour or more, on skinny 2.5-inch tires with no brakes. The controls were rudimentary at best. The rider spun the pedals or got a bump start to light the engine. Then he had only 3 things to operate: the right hand grip, which functioned as a standard throttle, the left hand grip, which worked as a spark advance and compression release, and a kill switch. Well, I guess technically 4, because on top of all that, they still had to remember to reach down and pump some oil into the bike occasionally, because they still operated on a total loss system. Because of not having any brakes, often they'd leave the throttle wide open and hit the kill switch for speed control. These engines were 4-stroke, 42-degree V-twin 1000cc engines that were primarily used for dirt track racing. However, Irwin Cannonball Baker had a record-breaking long-distance record of 11 days, 12 hours, and 10 minutes from San Diego to New York. These were introduced and in production from 1911 until 1918. Indian figured out early that racing was a good way to advertise and sell their bikes. Good performances on the track meant good sales at the dealership. What we refer to these days as win on Sunday, sell on Monday, was something that they believed back then, although it was called something different. In 1909, they built their own board track outside of their facility for testing purposes. In the fall of 1916, all the manufacturers agreed to suspend factory-supported competition. This action was taken because of the increased likelihood that the United States would be drawn into the war that had been raging in Europe. In 1919, the three major manufacturers committed themselves to a post-war competition program. By this time, most of the smaller bike builders, the ones that had rounded out the field in pre-war races, had dropped by the wayside. It was now officially a three-sided race. And on Labor Day in Marion, Indiana in 1919, the first big post-war event, Indian unveiled its new 61 1000cc Power Plus side valve engine. The new machine was set into a new keystone frame, lowering the center of gravity and using the engine and a stressed chassis member. The combination created a dynamic and powerful contender, and in April, Indiana's star rider Gene Walker arrived in Daytona Beach to put it through its paces. That February, the Harley-Davidson wrecking crew had set new speed records there. So Indian sent Walker with a stable of machines including 4-valve, 8-valve, and the new Power Plus racer. Walker decimated Harley's records, reclaiming the kilometer, 1, 2, and 5-mile records with average speeds 5 to 10 mile an hour faster than the Milwaukee company, including a top speed of 106 miles an hour on the new Keystone racer. From then on, Indian's new purebred racer with its distinctive Keystone frame became known as the Daytona. Legends like Shrimp Burns, Jim Davis, Curly Fredericks, and Gene Walker continued to mark up victories on wooden speedways and dirt tracks throughout the 1920s. Up next, we have Excelsior, who started out in Chicago and was never considered a serious threat on the race circuit. But in 1911, that changed when Schwinn acquired the company for $500,000. At the beginning of 2012, the company's V-twin pocket valve motor was nearly unbeatable. In August at Chicago's Riverview Motordrome, an Excelsior set a record for the mile, burning up the boards at an average speed of 88.9 miles an hour. Two of the biggest names in motorcycle racing, Jacob DeRosier and Charles Fearless Blake, were recruited away from the Springfield Wing Wham at Indian just weeks before the races in Sacramento in the last days of 1911. Excelsior had a powerful stable of riders and a capable and proven track machine with the Series 7. With Schwinn's investment, Excelsior would soon become a top contender in the sport and earn a spot among the big three American motorcycle manufacturers at the start of the 20th century. In Schwinn's debut year in 1912, Jake DeRosier set an unofficial world record for the kilometer at a speed of 94 miles an hour. Excelsior also became the first motorcycle to exceed an average speed of 100 miles an hour during the race, and was quickly being acclaimed as the fastest bike on the boards. This next one is a 1913 Excelsior flat track racer replica. It latterly under the Super X brand name. The first Excelsior was belt-driven single-cylinder engine, the engine which formed part of the frame. The engine itself was an inlet-over-exhaust F-head design. For whatever its limitations, it enabled the exhaust valve to be directly cooled by the incoming mixture, a positive advantage at the time. In 1913, the 61 cubic inch 1000cc twin was offered with all-chain drive, while 2-speed planetary transmission and a leaf spring, Indian-style front fork were two innovations introduced for the following season. By 1914, the Excelsior brand was proven to be one of the most successful manufacturers of motorcycles in the world. As production had increased to meet the demand, a new factory had become necessary. The new factory was state-of-the-art at the time and included a test track on the roof. The factory also offered their first two-stroke that year with a 250cc single-cylinder machine. All right, this next one here is a 1917 Excelsior board track racer. I'm not sure on the history or the story behind it, other than what it says on the auction card when we picked it up from the auction or took it out of the Anamosa National Motorcycle Museum. I do know that the racing was suspended in the fall of 1916, agreed upon by the three big manufacturers because of the possibility of the war or World War I, and did not resume until the spring of 1919. So again, I'm not sure if somebody had bought this and it was like raced individually or privately, not one of the manufactured events, or if it is just a rebuilt replica of a 1917 Excelsior board track racer. But good looking bike, and we have it. We figured we'd take a look at it and throw it up here. All right, up next we have a 1914 Harley-Davidson board track racer. From the very beginning of their enterprise, the intent of the Davidsons and William Harley was to build a rugged, dependable motorcycle that was suitable for personal transportation. To this end, they continued to produce slightly improved versions of their original model. Finally, in 1908, Walter Davidson, president of the company, decided that Harley-Davidson could no longer afford to ignore the competition. In June of that year, he himself had entered 2 endurance competitions and had perfect scores on both events. While the Harley-Davidson factory still declined to support an official racing effort, or for that matter to provide private owners with financial or technical help in their racing endeavors, Harley-Davidsons entered by privateers continued to make showings in some of the well-publicized road races of the day. These so-called road races were in effect endurance contests often conducted over unimaginably difficult terrain. And despite private success, the factory still proclaimed in their advertising that they did not support racing or competition in any form. In the 1913 September issue of Pacific Motorcyclist, Harley-Davidson's full-page advertisement read, "Don't blame us when Harley-Davidsons win a race, because we do not believe in racing. We do not employ any racing men. We build no special racing machines, but the results speak for themselves." However, after extensive testing, Harley-Davidson entered their new racer in the 1914 Dodge City, Kansas 300-mile road race. And in November of that same year, when Milwaukee fielded its first fully supported factory team at the Savannah 300-mile National Championship road race. And in their first fully factory-supported team, finished a strong third. Then on July 4th, 1915, in Dodge City, following many painful losses, Harley-Davidson, after 300 miles of racing, crossed the line 1st, 2nd, 4th, 5th, 6th, and 7th, showing the industry that Harley-Davidson had arrived. With its factory team winning every single national championship race in 1921, Harley-Davidson finally captured the title long held by Indian Motorcycles as the world's most successful motorcycle company. Though the achievement was due to a tireless refinement of the business, Harley-Davidson's factory team, the legendary Wrecking Crew, supported its claim through utter domination at the track. This exceptional 1921 Harley-Davidson F-Series racer was one of the fearsome machines on the warpath that year, and stands as an icon from Harley-Davidson's most significant chapter. 1921 personifies the team's legacy above any other year. With a roster including pioneer veterans of the sport and rising superstars, the Wrecking Crew counted amongst its ranks icons like Leslie Parkhurst, Otto Walker, Ralph Hepburn, and young Jimmy Davis. From Beverly Hills to Uniontown, Harley-Davidson consistently stood atop the podium at the height of Class A motorcycle racing. So the company had steered clear of the early circular board track motordromes of the 1910s. It was a force on the massive wooden speedways of the board track second era. In February 1921, Otto Walker was the first racer to pilot his Harley-Davidson to an average speed over 100 miles an hour on the boards of the Fresno Speedway. Then 2 months later, D.H. Davidson broke the 100-mile-an-hour barrier across the pond at England's famous Brooklands Loop. 3 months after that, the wrecking crew's youngest member, Jim Davis, bore the torch of the new era by winning the final Dodge City 300, America's most prestigious motorcycle race. Powered by a 61 cubic inch 989cc F-head V-twin, this machine is designed to hit top speed without comfort or compromise. Because of the wrecking crew in the 1921 Harley-Davidson F-Series, it will forever be a monumental era of motorcycling lore. Here we have a 1914 Yale board track racer. First Yale was built in California in 1906, and the first Yale motorcycle was announced. This stunning, meticulously restored 1914 Yale board track racer is one of the scarce few machines remaining from the pioneering company, which was one of the world's first motorcycle manufacturers. Among the first generation of companies to venture into the frontiers of motorcycle manufacturing, Yale began, like most of its contemporaries, as an extension of an existing bicycle company. In 1903, the Kirk Manufacturing Company and Snell Cycle Fittings combined to acquire the California Motor Company, perhaps one of the most notable motorcycle manufacturers at the time. Based in San Francisco, California, the California Motor Company built some of the country's first motorcycles, branded in 1901 as a California Motor Bicycle. However, with the sale to Kirk and Snell, the California Motor Company was gone as soon as it arrived, giving way to a new company in 1903, the Consolidated Manufacturing Company. Making its headquarters in Toledo, Ohio, the first Yale California motorcycles began rolling off the line in 1904, relatively unchanged from the previous design. By 1906, the California name was dropped, leaving the brand name of simply Yale, and with it came an improved engine, larger copper fuel tank, and a sprung fork, making it one of the first motorcycles to offer suspension. By 1910, Yale motorcycles had become synonymous with the highest quality machines on the market. A V-twin was introduced in that same year, and in 1912, its 61 cubic inch 1000cc V-twin featured distinctive horizontally cast cylinder fins to improve airflow and cooling. Yale machines were frequently found on racetracks across the country, with the company occasionally fielding factory teams. This Yale V-twin from 1914 is among the rarest class of early racing motorcycles from one of the last years of production. Production was ended in 1915. This video is a bit longer than what I normally post, and I did try to keep as much as I could to the bikes and about the bikes. There is, however, a ton of other information out there that eventually maybe we can cover, or if we get other models and board track racers down the road, which I'm sure that we will. I'd like to do a Merkel. I'd love to get my hands on a Cyclone. So hopefully we'll get some of those. We can add a little bit more information to it. But some of the guys that did the racing on here, remember these were total loss systems, which means that the oil was being pumped out onto the racetrack. They're racing around at 90 to 100 miles an hour, pumping oil back into the engine to keep going around the track, trying to avoid slipping in the oil that everybody's losing out of their bikes. And they're wearing basic cotton pants and a wool shirt with a leather helmet, so-called helmet, doing 90 to 100 miles an hour. It's pretty impressive stuff when you start looking at it, start reading about it, start learning about it. But again, hopefully we'll have some more information and we can add more to this later as we collect more board track racers. Please like, comment, and subscribe. We'll catch you next time.